Hi everyone. It's definitely odd not to be able to see the people, but hopefully you're all out there. This is work with Yvonne Bezzoli and Nina Vassalou, and primarily Yvonne actually, who unfortunately could not attend. But so I have to say that all the best parts of the work here are Yvonne's, and all the errors are especially during the presentation, they're mine. So jokes apart, before I forget and I run out of time, I wanted to acknowledge that this work is part of the iRead project. It's a 4-year project that aims to develop personalized learning technologies to support reading skills. So kind of starting from the bigger picture, one of the motivations behind this work is how it revolves around one of the tools of this project called Navigo, that is a reading game with several mini activities that focus on different areas of reading skills. As you can see here in the picture, there are various activities that I won't go into details of how the system works. They're underlined by pedagogical and a domain model that helps sequences this kind of tasks. So part of the remit of the project is to design learning analytics tools that accompany teachers and as they use the games in the classroom and support orchestration and kind of management. And so the paper we wrote for LAC reflects at the stage of the project where we engage practitioners from different contexts, supporting the students with these diverse literacy needs in the early design of analytics. So the goal of this paper and the work here is twofold. On a more kind of pragmatic level, we wanted to understand the teacher's needs and the preferences in this particular context and their practice and actually also do what we preach in interaction design and educational technology, avoiding technocentrism and deterministic roles of technology. And so to implement meaningful analytics for teacher practice, we wanted to engage practitioners as much as possible. On the other hand, and more related to the paper, methodologically, we wanted to better understand the strengths and weaknesses of this approach with inspiration cards, because we wanted to involve people like most of the teachers who would have low experience with learning analytics tools in the early stage of the design process. So before I proceed, a little bit about the background and work in the field of engaging teachers, particularly in learning analytics co-design. That's an emerging concern of many practitioners and researchers. So because I don't see faces, so someone, if I'm going too fast, please let me know. So what do we know so far in terms of involving teachers in LA co-design? It is well understood that that the learning analytics, and if you were in the earlier slot that Maren was hosting, you saw various examples where learning analytics are positioned as awareness tools or reflection tools, informing the decision making and so on. And there are several frameworks in the field, like this one by Martinez Maldonado and several other colleagues in the area. However, apart from the specific use, until recently, several voices in the field kind of questioned the focus on algorithms, data mining, and emphasize more the need to involve practitioners in early stages of design. And particularly some of the work by Ken Holstein, Ryan Baker, Marcel Smith, and Roberto Martinez Maldonado. I think some of you may be here, and I'd welcome the discussion and the feedback later on. So this is kind of our premise, and methodologically this work relates a lot to this LaTux workflow that outlines this iterative human-centered design process for learning analytics, going through sort of the identification problem, followed by different stages of prototyping. But the main thing and why we've framed the work around this is that it also recognizes a transformative role of data in this context, and the importance of including teachers in early stages. However, this early stage of problem identification is a challenging area, particularly when you are engaging with practitioners who may lack context or lack an understanding or previous experience with this kind of tools. And particularly in this work, it was positioned more as a requirement analysis, whereas in our stage of the project, we saw it as a more kind of generative process. Hopefully, the last few years, there is some work that is emerging in learning analytics that has started to explore the potential of methodologies and tools to meaningfully involve stakeholders in these early stages. But it is important to recognize particularly what I mentioned in relation to limited understanding of data processing and visualization techniques from the practitioners, and also lack of data literacy that some of you mentioned. So some of this previous work was helpful to frame our thinking. I include here some of the references, but there is more literature review extensive in the paper. So following a kind of design thinking process, we framed our problem based on the literature in the field and the practices, and we wanted to try this approach to simulate teacher creativity by using these inspiration cards. That encourages fostering this combination of different ideas and taking into account both the domain and the technology and what they afford. So we thought that the inspiration cards have the potential to scaffold these conversations, but still we wanted to sort of keep them closely to our area and our particular problem to be more pragmatic. So in this overall process, I will focus today on the ideation, but in the project we have moved on into prototyping, and if someone is interested, we can talk about this later on. So in relation to the ideation phase, particularly in the inspiration cards, we rely on this work by Halskov and Dalskal from sort of human-computer interaction and design in general. That includes guidance such as preparing the cards in advance from the literature, and also our understanding of the different areas that we represent, presenting the cards to the participants, and following a kind of co-creation phase. They refer to posters, but in our case it was more scenario. So to contextualize it to the iRead games, we came up with these particular cards. I'll go through them column by column. So the three first are more the sort of technology cards. So the properties of the game activities, the game log data, and what could be captured. So to help the participants understand what is possible from the game so far. So an important part, for example, of the games is this pathway that gets created for the game sequencing that relies on progression of accuracy, building, and automaticity as far as the reading skills are concerned for the students. So to help them understand this mapping of the games. And every card at the back had some further information to help the participants understand them a little bit better if they couldn't remember them or something. And the other cards had particular visualizations that we could rely on, and just as examples, but also domain aspects. For example, like that they're using the words, or that the decoding, or that basically domain aspects from the domain, like prefixes and suffixes and so on, but also the way they use the different year groups, whether it's a whole class or a small group or individual usage. So we laid out these cards to the So the participants and so, are you with me? Okay. So in terms of the participants, we have 3 or 4 participants in each group. We've had 3 different groups, about 1.5 hour workshops. It involved teachers with varied experience and usually a design expert or a learning analytics, not necessarily expert, but sort of at least aware or savvy, who participated in the design with the rest of the participants and helped in facilitating the process. The workshops follow these phases. First, we explore the existing practices that the teachers were engaged in. So here you can just barely see in the laptop, they show the different examples of the things that they usually do. Then a very important phase that is not very well outlined in the literature, at least in our context, was important to help the teachers familiarize with the Navigo games themselves. So we outlined the games, we let them play a little bit with them because they didn't have experience with those in advance, and not everyone who we wanted to participate would have been able to have this experience. And then we explore the new possibilities with the cards through this discussion basically, and kind of brainstorming and using the cards to make a scenario like the one that you see here. So we displayed the cards on a table and also went through them in advance to sort of let's negotiate the meaning with the participants and make sure that we're all on the same page. We invited teachers to combine the cards and to construct the scenarios. And for each scenario, the facilitator scaffolded the process by asking what kind of data do you need for the scenario that you're outlining, why, how would this inform the pedagogical practices that you are outlining, and so on. So these are examples that came up from this process. For example, needing to identify the knowledge of the sort of the progression of the whole class and what they defined as learning trends, and then here are reasons or pedagogical rationale behind it. I will not go through the examples there on the paper. I'd like to focus more on the actual methodology. And so these are, okay, the chat keeps coming in the middle. So these are findings from the, so we analyzed these discussions with thematic analysis and developed different themes around which to frame the data. In the paper we outline 8, but here I just wanted to mention these 3 that are bold. First of all, the need for the participants that they express to have trust and control of the educational technology more generally, like the games themselves and what they measure, what kind of performance data they provide. But they saw the learning analytics as a tool for orchestration, for helping them to do that in particular. And so that was an interesting framing that came up. The other was the time and workload and their expectations. So, for example, one particular quote from this was one in the screen now. Honestly, the visualization should be small groups of individuals because we know ourselves that time is such a premium already. So time and the workload overall was kept coming back and informed a lot of the design recommendations and suggestions that they were coming up with to be able to frame it in ways that would help them not spend a lot of time with this. And it might have to do also with their literacy. And other aspects like they saw learning analytics as a way to have evidence-based small group sessions, which is something that we've done in our work, and others in the field are engaging in, to be able to use data to come up with groups and recommendations. As I said, more of these are in the paper. I wanted to take the opportunity mostly to reflect on the methodology. And so in terms of the cards, and compared to other techniques we have used in the past, the teachers welcome and engage with the cards. I think that the tangible aspects of the cards and the fact that they provided also some structure in terms of the of the discussion around the posters, but also help generate some kind of rules of engagement compared to a more kind of open brainstorming or requirements elicitation process, was quite welcomed, and it helped make these more learner-centered scenarios that we came up with, particularly because of the domain cards that included aspects of the domain rather than a more technocentric sort of solutions that could emerge only from cards or from people who could bring the affordances of the technology on the table. So that was an interesting kind of reflection. On the other hand, or in addition, what was really important, we found this mix of expertise, both in terms of the teachers. So particularly in two of the workshops, a head teacher was involved, and they would bring the more kind of policy or more kind of global kind of school management level, rather than a teacher who would bring more the local awareness needs and teaching aspects like that, but also the role of the facilitators, both the person who would scaffold the design, but also the more learning analytics person who was particularly useful in kind of bringing some of the elements and the understanding of what learning analytics can do in this context. And so on the other hand, we wanted to reflect on a trade-off, and that's where I welcome also the feedback from others who have used this method or are using different methods in terms of the expressivity versus close coupling of the cards to our domain. So we, as I showed earlier, we designed some cards that were very closely related to the games, and that is important in our case. And we felt that it would scaffold and kind of bootstrap the process to get faster to the design decisions that we need to make in our project at kind of a pragmatic level. Having had more time or perhaps more opportunities, budget and so on to iterate, we might have left this initial technology cards more open-ended to allow for more expressive scenarios and more ideas to come up from the teachers, which is usually the recommendation from the literature. But we found that this helped us have a more concrete, at least prototype ideas that would come up from that. On the other hand, compared to previous work, we saw some lack of criticality in terms of the challenges for the data that are coming through, or how reliable they are, or whether they reflect the performance of the students and so on. There wasn't much on this, and in addition, the teachers did not use new cards so much, and that is something perhaps to kind of ponder in terms of the methodology. So in future work and what we're doing now, we're using the same method again for the learning, for more specific learning designs, not so much the design of the learning analytics, but learning designs of how the games are used in the classroom and appropriated. And that we have found very relevant again. So again, we're following the same methodology, and we're trying to generalize the method. So any sharing of resources or other aspects that others are interested in it, I'm open to suggestions and questions. I will leave you with a slide of the team that has contributed in this. And again, I'd welcome questions in terms of the reflections from the methodology and what you might find interesting in terms of sharing resources, because as I said, they're rather specific, but it would be good to find similarities with others. And so I'm open to questions. Thank you.